Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom. How's it going?
Tony, we are, as of right now, about 2 days from Christmas, and based on whatever transfer portal clause is delivering to Columbus, Ryan Day has been on the good list, and apparently the very good list this year. He is rolling in transfers right now, another big one for Ohio State.
Yes, Purdue tight end Max Klare, ranked the number one tight end in the transfer portal this season, has committed to Ohio State, has signed with Ohio State. And now the Buckeyes have a really, really productive receiver, tight end for whoever their quarterback is next year. And just, as I said, productive, the second most receptions among tight ends in the Big Ten this year, behind Tyler Warren, who, as we know, is very, very good. But Max Klare himself, 6'4", 240, a redshirt sophomore this year, has 2 years of eligibility remaining time. And I'll throw this one out to you as I try to bring up his stats real quick. He has had at least 2 catches in every game that he has played in his career. And that's pretty impressive for, a tight end. And he was a redshirt freshman last year and started some games and had, like I said, two catches in each game that he played last year before being injured. So this is a guy that I don't know if he's going to match his production that he had this year at Ohio State, but I do know that the capability, the possibility is there to do that, because we've seen Cade Stover and guys like that, maybe just him, but they will get the ball to him. So here, Max Klare, 51 catches, 684 yards, 4 touchdowns this season as a redshirt sophomore, and is just one of the most productive players. And Tom has some ability after the catch. So really, really good pickup for the Buckeyes. He played the first 5 games of his redshirt freshman year, got hurt, and then two catches, 8 catches, 5 catches, 4 catches, 3 catches in his first 5 games in his career. And then this year, he's just been pretty spectacular. His last 3 games, 7, 7, and 5 catches.
Yeah, and his season total this year, 51 catches, 685 yards, 4 touchdowns. I was just looking at Oregon, their receivers, who are good receivers. Evan Stewart, who absolutely tore Ohio State up, had 3 fewer catches and 72 fewer yards and 1 more touchdown than Max Klare. And that's Evan Stewart, former 5-star All-World, Texas A&M, now Oregon transfer, who had 140 whatever yards against Ohio State. And Max Klare, playing with Hudson Card and whoever else played quarterback for Purdue this year, put up essentially the same, if not slightly better numbers than that. That's wild. And he, I don't know where his production is going to be at Ohio State. He doesn't need to put up 51 catches and 600 yards for Ohio State. His down games this year, you go through the game log, and his quiet games, 3 for 36 against Notre Dame, 2 for 46 against Oregon State, 3 for 40 against Nebraska. Those are good Ohio State tight end days. Those are like, wow, G. Scott had a really productive day. That's impressive. When you have, I don't think I'm breaking any news here, but Purdue does not have any wide receivers as good as Jeremiah Smith or Emeka Egbuka or Carnell Tate, and they certainly do not have Will Howard at quarterback. So, he's kind of doing things on hard level. But you shared a stat right before we started where what was the stat about 40-yard receptions?
He has 3 40-yard receptions this season, which is more than any other tight end in the nation, other than Harold Fannin, who at Bowling Green, who has put up ridiculous numbers this year. Harold Fannin has 4. So You've got Max Klare with 1 fewer, but nobody else, no other tight end in the Big Ten has more than 1.
So now he's been just behind Tyler Warren in one area and just behind Harold Fannin in another. And those are the 2 guys who were the only 2 candidates for the Mackey Award. So now they're both presumably gone next year. I think Fannin has already said he's going to the NFL. So congratulations. Ohio State just got the top returning tight end in the state of Ohio, in the entire nation. And the reason I said state of Ohio there is my brain was already moving on to, here's what I wanted to say next. Don't forget to say this. Between Max Klare and Phillip Daniels, the right tackle who transferred to Ohio State from Minnesota, those are two guys from the Cincinnati area. And those are two guys that Ohio State probably looked at as they got to other Big Ten schools and went, we probably should have gone after that guy. That was probably a miss during recruiting. The transfer portal is now serving as like whiteout for Ohio State. Like, okay, well, you know what? We didn't make the decision we should have made a couple of years ago, but now we have the opportunity to, change history and bring this guy in now. And, we hope you had fun developing with, it would be condescending to call it like the minor league affiliates, but it's that's sort of what it's working like. You play well at, another school, and you earn your way up into the college football playoff ranks. I'm sure that the folks at Purdue and Minnesota would not appreciate it being characterized like that, but functionally, that's kind of how it's working right now. And, there's a whole separate conversation about how, whether that's a good thing for the sport of football or not, because Minnesota is doing that to whoever is the top tight end in the MAC, or, Purdue is the top tight end in the Sun Belt or whatever. It just kind of is. This is sort of how this is working now in the transfer portal. And if you're at Ohio State, that's great, because even if you have a year when you miss, well, you bring in we'll bring in a tackle. Okay, we'll bring in a tight end. Okay, just brought in a running back from West Virginia. Like, okay, well, that's fine. It's like going shopping. It's like going shopping not on December 23rd, where I just went shopping. And no, I don't want to do that. It's much easier. The portal, Tony, there's no lines, no waiting. It's just, okay, give me 2 of these, give me 3 of these. It's Al Cervic in the pro shop in Caddyshack.
I don't want to make this show too long, but I was also shopping. I was at Kroger and I used the self shopping cart where you just put the items in and it tallies it, because I was not waiting in those lines, Tom. And right now, this is Ohio State, not waiting in those lines, Tom. They're kind of outsourcing some development to we'll just send it off to the other states, and then they'll come back to us. But it also works well for those kinds of programs. Kyle McCord going to Syracuse, Aaron Nolan going to South Carolina, where it's not Ohio State just taking. They will also pay it forward, as Woody Hayes once said. I'm pretty sure he meant that with regard to the future of the transfer portal. People might ask, well, why are you bringing him in? Why are you bringing Max Klare in? And, well, you're losing a fifth-year senior in G. Scott. You've been playing, and I assume Patrick Gerd is, I believe, out of here. But again, he's a walk-on, probably not a walk-on next year. Maybe who knows how they're going to be doing it. But even if he does have eligibility remaining, like, you would still want to bring in some veterans. And I know they've got 2 freshmen in the incoming class. They thought they were bringing in 2 in the 2024, but maybe it's just 1 because Demarion Witten may stay at wide receiver. You've gotten some guys that got some experience this year, but this guy is also very experienced and very productive, and you know kind of what you're going to get. It's also insurance against attrition, and maybe they already know that there's going to be attrition, but I don't think you can operate as if, well, I'm sure everybody's going to be back, because you've had conversations and Keenan Bailey knows where his players are, where their mindset is and what they're thinking. So anytime you bring in somebody from a position that has some guys on it, you kind of like raise your eyebrow. But also in this instance, with the lack of production and the availability of the most productive returning tight end in America, perhaps, who is also an Ohio kid, this is kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, 100% a no-brainer. There's no reason not to do this. And, there's always the question, if you bring him in, does someone leave? Okay, if someone leaves, would they have left if you hadn't brought them in? There's no way to kind of work these counterfactuals. And with the way the transfer portal is sort of slated right now, it only opens now and after spring. So if you don't get someone now and then someone on your team decides to leave, then you better get someone in the spring, because if you don't get someone in the spring, then you're shorthanded for the upcoming season, and there's no, mid-season transfer window like there is in European soccer. There's no free agency. There's no trade deadline where you can pick someone up at Halloween for a player to be named later. You got to get what you get. And right now, the way the system is set up, it's set up to incentivize you to stockpile as much talent as you can. And, now that you're stuck with 85 guys, you can stockpile as much talent as you want to stockpile and bring in some extra bodies. And then if someone leaves, someone leaves. But there's so much uncertainty around everything, around the transfer portal, around eligibility. Eligibility is like a state of mind at this point. It's like Ross Dellinger just reported earlier on Monday, whatever day it is, Monday, that, the Diego Pavia loophole where I played at JUCO, but JUCO isn't governed by the NCAA, so therefore that shouldn't count against my NCAA eligibility. And the NCAA kind of went, fine, your attorney's suit is too expensive, we will probably lose. And then once you do it for Diego Pavia, they're like, but this is just for you. And then they very quickly realize, well, there's this thing called precedent. Our attorneys wear very cheap suits, and we're unfamiliar with precedent apparently at this time. So now JUCO doesn't apparently count against your eligibility. So everything is just kind of like, how many years does this guy have left? And it's like, well, I don't know. And how long is anyone going to stay? No one is tied to any school at this point. So it's really just kind of chaos. And this feels like this is how schools are going to deal with it. They're just going to say, okay, we are not guaranteed to have any of these individual players here, so we're going to bring in as many as we can. And in some cases, that's bringing in an insurance policy. In this case, this is bringing in a really, really top of the line player.
Yeah, an insurance policy that will actually pay. It's you talk about basically time is a flat circle in terms of eligibility, and who knows how long anybody's going to be here. But really, really good player, kind of a Cade Stover after the catch type of guy, has that kind of potential. I was watching a little bit of his highlights, and he scored the lone touchdown against Penn State, made a guy miss, and just a little shimmy and right into the end zone. So he's got some playmaking, very good hands, really good hands, and good size. So there you go, newest Ohio State Buckeye as of this recording, as we are live right now recording this. Max Klare, former Purdue tight end, new Ohio State tight end, 2 years of eligibility remaining. So thank you all for tuning in. Hit that thumbs up before you go. Hit the bell to be notified. Subscribe to the channel if you have not yet done so. And of course, find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We would appreciate seeing you there. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.